Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege. Privilege.
What's happening? This your boy Chris Cross checking in. This is the TCMMA podcast. And guess what? We got another great week of fights. Now, you might say, Chris Cross, what's your definition of great? Because this week is not looking good. I mean, at the top, you got Tybura and Spivac. The rematch. These guys aren't even like big-time, top-rate contenders, but it's the main event, right? And you kind of get away with this in the heavyweight division. You get away with a weak main event if it's a heavyweight fight, especially if someone gets KO'd. If we get a 5-round drawn-out fight, that will be terrible for this, for this card. But it's also a week that we get to see, and I'm being serious here, who are the true UFC fans, right? Who are the true UFC fans? We're going to find out this week, because if you're not watching, then we know that you're sort of a fair weather fan, right? You're just going to tune in for the big fights. You're not tuning in for all the fighters that are on the come up. And to make matters worse, the co-main event was scrapped. Gutierrez and Basharat are now fighting. That's breaking news today. So it's even weakened the card further down to 11 fights. Now, will the UFC add a fight? I'm gonna say I doubt it. I'm gonna say I doubt it because, it's at the Apex Center. It's kind of a filler. This event, they're just trying to fill it, so you get your 44, 45 cards for the year. But at the same time, I'm a diehard UFC fan, and I don't care who's fighting. I'm tuning in, baby. You know what I'm saying? I'm tuning in. Make no mistake about it. So let's jump right into it. Because in the very first fight that we're going to get into today's prediction is Kazama versus Gregorio. This was a prelim fight. Not quite sure yet because the card hasn't been necessarily restructured. At this point, we believe this is going to be in the main event, but we're not for sure. But nonetheless, you got a 10-4 Kazama taking on an 8-4 Gregorio. So let's get into that. First and foremost, here we go. Buckle your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. In the bantamweight division at UFC Vegas 95, you got Toshiomi Kazama taking on Charalampos Gregorio. And I like this fight. Great matchup here. These are always tough divisions to predict, too, as you go lower and lower in weight. Kazama, 10-4. Gregorio, 8-4. Both guys stand at 5'7". Gregorio is 32. Kazama, 27. Kazama has a 1-inch reach advantage, and both guys stand right-handed. Making this fight even tougher to predict is neither guy's really that active on the feet. They're both right at, hovering just above 2 significant strikes per minute, which is a terribly slow pace, but that's because they land takedowns, right? Kazama lands 1 every other round. Gregorio lands 1 every round. So this fight is going to take place on the ground more than likely. Now, Kazama stops 2 out of 3 takedowns. He's got a 66% takedown defense. He's lost back-to-back fights to Rinya Nakamura by first-round KO. He also got KO'd in the first round by Garrett Armfield, so that's not a good look for him. Gregorio, on the other hand, lost to Chad and Helliger by decision, He did win at the Contender Series. So you got a guy that's coming through the Contender Series, and his opponent, Kazama, came through Road to UFC. Right now, though, Gregorio has 100% takedown defense. In the loss against Helliger, he had 4 takedowns to none, but trailed 85-21 in significant strikes. So he's going to have to pick up the pace in that department, but don't think he can't strike. I mean, he did KO Cameron Smotherman at the Contender Series. So I'm going to lean towards Gregorio getting the win here. I like the fact that, he does have a KO win on the record. I think he's, going to be a little tougher than Kazama coming through Road to UFC. Contender Series is a little bit more high stakes. So that tells me, or at least leads me to believe, because we don't have a lot of fights to look at, that Gregorio is going to be the stronger fighter here. So I like him to win this fight. He should dominate the ground, but he's just got to pick up the significant strikes in case this goes to a decision. So I look for him to get better in that area. He'll get the win here, in my opinion, and with the 9-4 bantamweight division, UFC Vegas 95. Yeah, and that turns out to be a simple prediction for me. Again, with these two fighters, you don't have a lot to go off of. I mean, you just don't. So the bottom line is I'm making my prediction. And sometimes you got to make predictions in off certain things, and it works for you and it works against you. Like when a fight's close and you got a Brazilian in there, I'm going with the Brazilian if I can't make a decision one way or the other. But in this one, you got a Road to UFC fighter and you got a Contender Series fighter. And Contender Series is a much better depiction of what a UFC caliber fight or level that you're going to see compared to Road to UFC. And that may backfire on me, but I like Gregorio to win that fight. Please believe it. Now, as we work our way up on the card, you got several big fights here as far as I'm concerned. But in the next one, we're going to get to Alan Nascimento versus Jafel Filho. And both of these guys are solid competitors. Both guys very capable of winning this fight, but it is a little tricky because it's a flyweight division fight. Those are always tricky. There's going to be a lot of rolling on the ground and things like that. And they're both Brazilian. Go figure. So I have no angle here if the fight is close. So let's get into Nascimento versus Filho right now. In the flyweight division at UFC Vegas 95, you got Alan Nascimento coming in at 20-6. The Brazilian takes on fellow Brazilian Jafel Filho, who comes in at 16-3. So you got two really good Brazilians going at it here. Flyweight division. Alan Nascimento, 1 inch taller at 5'8". He's 32. Filho 31. So no big deal there in the age. Both guys 69-inch reach. Both guys stand right-handed. Now, Nascimento slightly more active on the feet, but both guys not really that active. Nascimento at 3.2 significant strikes per minute to 2.4 for Filho. So that's just kind of terrible for both guys. But as Brazilians do, they take you to the ground. These two get a takedown on average every other round. Nascimento's 16% takedown defense. Filho 55. Both guys easily below the UFC average. But Nascimento's coming off back-to-back wins. He submitted Carlos Hernandez and got a decision over Jake Hadley, right? Holding Jake Hadley to 8 significant strikes over 3 rounds due to 2 takedowns. So just completely took him out of the fight. Now, before that, he lost to Tagir Ulanbekov, who's a solid fighter, and that was still a split decision. Filho's also won back-to-back fights over O'Day Osborne by submission, both by decision, and Daniel Perez by arm triangle submission. He did lose to Muhammad Makayev by submission in the 3rd round. So both guys evenly matched here. It's going to be an interesting fight, to say the least. But I'm going to lean towards Alan Nascimento because both guys are even on the ground. He does have terrible takedown defense, so that is an X factor. But he is a slightly better striker, and I expect him to win this fight on the feet, because if it does go to the ground, both guys should be equally matched, even though Filho's getting submissions. So that's something to keep in mind. I mean, very easily could submit Nascimento, but it's going to be tougher and trickier than other opponents because you got Brazil on Brazil. So no easy angle here for me, because you know me, if it's close and there's not really a big difference, I'm going with the Brazilian 9 times out of 10. And they're both Brazilian, so that doesn't help here. But I like Alan Nascimento to get the job done here, likely by decision. He'll lead in significant strikes in 2 of the 3 rounds to get the win to move to 21-6 here, flyweight division, UFC Vegas 95. And I guess you could also look at it like I can't go wrong here, right? I can't go wrong in this fight because they're both Brazilian. So in that case, I can't go wrong. I'm still going with a Brazilian. And in this case, it's Alan Nascimento. You know, the 2 toughest divisions for me to predict, too, are the lightweight division and the flyweight division. It doesn't mean the winning percentage is lower when predicting these fights. It just means that it's tougher because there's not a lot of angles. Usually the numbers are very close. Usually both guys can land takedowns, and usually both guys can defend takedowns, especially in the flyweight and lightweight divisions. Now you start getting into bantamweight and featherweight and welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight, women's divisions. I usually find an angle. But these two divisions, I'm always struggling to make the pick, even as I go through the stats and look at previous fights and all that. So that's something to keep in mind. The flyweight division is one of the two toughest divisions, at least in my opinion, to predict. But we'll take Alan Nascimento in this one, and hopefully he can get the finish and not make us sweat it out. Now, in the next one, you got two women, solid fighters. Yana Santos versus Chelsea Chandler. And I like this fight for a lot of reasons, right? Number one, it's the women's bantamweight division. It's always exciting. Number two, this is almost a toss-up fight. Santos is a slight favorite, but it's very close. So let's get into this one right now. In the women's bantamweight division at UFC Vegas 95, you got Yana Santos taking on Chelsea Chandler. Now Santos is 14-8. Chandler still very new, just 8 fights in. She's 6-2. This fight is basically even coming in. Now Chandler's 2 inches taller. She's 33. Santos 34. I like that. Both got a 68-inch reach. Santos fights right-handed. Chandler fights southpaw, left-handed. So opposite stance. Santos is slightly more active, 4.2 significant strikes per minute to 3.5. Both land on average like a takedown every 3 rounds. In terms of takedown defense, both are well under 50%. So there's going to be some takedowns in this fight for sure. Santos has struggled, losing 3 in a row to Irene Aldana by KO. Holly Holm, decision. She got taken down 4 times in that fight. Carol Rosa beat her by split decision. Although you can make the case Santos should have won 95-66. She led in significant strikes and still lost. Now Chelsea Chandler, on the other hand, beat Josiane Nunes by decision. I believe Santos would have done the same thing. She lost to Norma Dumont, as she should, by decision, and beat Julija Stoliarenko by KO. So she's won 2 of the last 3. And I really like that KO on the resume because we haven't seen Santos ever get a finish, right? She's 4-5 in the UFC. She's been finished, but in all 4 wins, she goes to a decision. So that tells me all I need to see. I think Chelsea Chandler is going to pull this thing out, and I think she's going to get the finish, right? She's not active, but when she throws with power. And this is a fight Santos should win, and she's a slight favorite, but it's almost even. I got to lean towards Chelsea Chandler. I'm going to take a chance here. I think she's going to get the job done on power. And end up getting the finish because this fight's going to drag on, but I think Chandler gets the finish late in this fight, like in round 3, to get the victory. That's my opinion here. She'll move to 7-2, women's bantamweight division, UFC Vegas 95. And I say taking a chance because Chelsea Chandler is the underdog. Make no mistake about it. I mean, she's the underdog in this fight. Not by a lot, just by a little, but she is in fact the underdog. So we are taking a chance on this one. But yeah, I see her getting the finish late in the 3rd round. Real late, like the final 2 minutes of this fight. Remember, I said it. But if it doesn't end in a finish, Chelsea Chandler still wins, either the 1st or 2nd. So it'll be tied going into the 3rd, and she'll dominate the 3rd round. Whether she gets the finish or not, that remains to be seen. But we'll take Chelsea Chandler in this one. And remember, most of the time our win percentage skyrockets in the main card. But this week, every fight is like a prelim, including the main event. Every fight is like a prelim. If this was any other card, a lot of these fights will be in the prelims. Maybe the co-main event coming up next might make the main event or main card. But for the most part, these are all prelim fights. So I don't expect the win percentage to get any better. This is going to be a tricky card. And, I'm not expecting great things here in terms of our record, but listen, you never know what's going to happen until it happens. Now, as we jump into the co-main event, you got Damon Jackson versus Chepe Mariscal. And this is going to be an interesting fight. Damon Jackson is a guy that earlier in his career seemed unstoppable. Since the return, he struggled a little bit. He still gets his wins, but he struggled a little bit. Now he's 23-6. He was like 20-3 at one point, roughly. Chepe Mariscal, also American, is 16-6. He's a slight favorite. So let's get into that prediction right now. In the featherweight division at UFC Vegas 95, you got Damon Jackson coming in at 23-6, taking on Chepe Mariscal, who comes in at 16-6. Let's get into it. Damon Jackson, 4 inches taller. He's always tall at this weight class at 5'11". He's 35, so he's at that breaking point. Mariscal right in the prime at 31. Damon Jackson has a 2-inch reach advantage. He's a switch stance fighter compared to the right-handed Mariscal, so that'll be interesting to watch. Now, Chepe is more active, 4.7 significant strikes to 3 significant strikes per minute for Damon Jackson, so Chepe's got an advantage there. Both guys land nearly a takedown per round, so that's going to be important. Takedown defense will be everything, just 40% for the leech, a.k.a. Damon Jackson. But he's coming off the win over Alexander Hernandez by split decision. Before that, he lost to Billy Q, Billy Quarantillo, and Dan Ige, who actually KO'd him. So he's lost 2 of the last 3. Chepe, on the other hand, is on a win streak. He's won 3 in a row since entering the UFC, beating Trevor Peek by decision, Jack Jenkins by KO, and a split decision win over Morgan Sherry. So you got an interesting fight set up here, and Damon Jackson is a guy, again, 23-6. He's used to winning. Chepe has 6 losses. It's going to be a close fight here, man. This is going to be a close fight. And I got to lean towards Chepe just because he's more active on the feet, and Damon Jackson doesn't defend takedowns well. So Damon's going to have to be very aggressive here. He's going to have to shoot in for takedowns, like in his last fight where he had 3 takedowns to none, if he's going to win this fight. But the problem is Chepe has better takedown defense, nearly 70%. So I got to go with Chepe. The only way he loses is if he just gets taken down at will by Damon Jackson, which is possible, but I don't see it happening. Chepe wins this fight by decision, both with takedowns at control time and significant strikes, in my opinion, to get a decision win to move to 17-6 here, featherweight division, UFC Vegas 95. And it's odd to even hear my own self say that, right? It's odd because Damon Jackson is a guy that seemed, again, unstoppable at one point. Roughly 20-3, 20-2, something like that. Since he's come back, he's like 500. Going like 3-3 or 3-4, something like that. So he struggled. Now, he struggled against good fighters. I wouldn't say Chepe Mariscal is a great fighter, but Damon Jackson is struggling enough in the second half of his career here that it leads me to believe that Chepe Mariscal, who's got the momentum coming in, will get the job done. So we'll see how that turns out. And in fact, right now, unless something changes, this fight gets bumped from fight 3 to fight 2 as the previous co-main event between Gutierrez and Javid Basharat was canceled, which weakened this card tremendously because a lot of people believe the co-main event was the best fight on this card, and it's not happening now. So now as we creep into the main event, you got a rematch here, and it really doesn't matter because this fight was so long ago when they first fought. Marcin Tybura versus Serghei Spivac. And it's not the best main event in the world. I mean, listen, there's no argument I can make to say, hey, this is a great main event. But the bottom line is it's a heavyweight division fight that leads you to believe that it's not going 5 rounds, someone's getting KO'd, and, you know, hopefully that's what happens. Because if we get a 5-round main event that goes to a decision and it's a heavyweight fight, people are not going to be happy, and people are going to continue saying this is one of the worst cards of the year. So let's see if I predicted that way. Let's get into this fight right now. In the heavyweight division at UFC Vegas 95, aka UFC Fight Night, you got Marcin Tybura taking on Serghei Spivac. And this is going to be a big one. Heavyweight division main events are always awesome. And this one's even better because it's even money going in. Both guys stand 6'3", Spivac 29, Tybura 38. So big age difference. Both guys 78-inch reach. Both guys stand right-handed. Both guys land 3.6 significant strikes per minute. I like it. But Spivac can land takedowns. More than a takedown and a half per round. Tybura, though, nearly 80% takedown defense. He's coming off the win against Tai Tuivasa by sub, lost to Tom Aspinall, but beat Blagoy, Ivanov, and Alexander Romanov to win 3 of his last 4. Now, this is a rematch. In the previous fight, Tybura beat Spivac, 2 takedowns to none, 43-26, in significant strikes. That's why the fight is so close. He's just getting older. Spivac lost to Cyril Gane by KO, but submitted Derek Lewis. Wow. KO'd Augusto Sakai and KO'd Greg Hardy. So both guys have won 3 of the last 4. Now, here's the difference in this fight. It's real simple. Tybura won the last one, but he's now 38 years old. And he's a big boy, so it's going to be hard for Spivac. But I think Spivac's age at 29 years old, he's right in the middle of the prime. When they previously fought, he was like 24, 25, 26. Now he's entered that prime window. You're going to see a different fighter. I like Spivac to win this fight by submission. He's going to take the fight to the ground. He has to. But in my opinion, he gets to win that way by submission to move to 17-4 here, heavyweight division, UFC Vegas 95. Yeah, man, that's a tough one too. That is an absolute tough one. Again, even in this one, it's hard to hear myself say Spivac just because Tybura beat him last time, and Tybura recently beat Tai Tuivasa, who many of you know that name. You know the name Tai Tuivasa. And even though Tai Tuivasa has struggled late, he had a lot of big wins on the come up, but Tybura beat him. But I'm banking on the fact in this prediction that we're going to see a different Tybura now because of the fact he's 38. He's getting into that elderly, if we can say that, 30s, late 30s. That's elderly in the world of MMA. So, you know, the last time these guys fought, he was what, 33, 34, 35, somewhere in that ballpark. 38's a big difference. Spivac should use that against him in this fight because Spivac's 29, right? He wasn't in the prime window last time. Now he is. He's got a lot to prove here. He's got a lot to prove. And in fact, even though he lost last time, he's a slight favorite in this one. And I like it, man. I like this main event. I don't care what anyone says. Poland versus Moldova. Let's go. Let's go. Moldova, stand up. Let's get this victory. Hopefully Spivac wins and moves to 17-4. That would be big for the main event predictions, which now are 15-11, right? At one point we were 4-7. You've heard me say that during the watch party multiple times. We're proud of it. We've been tearing it up lately over the last, 10 to 15 weeks for sure. Now also up and down this card, you got some other good fights, right? Like Parsons versus Kinoshita, USA versus Japan, right? Parsons is a slight favorite. That prediction is posted. You got Barlow taking on the newcomer in Veretnikov, who gets the opportunity, even though he lost at the Contender Series several years ago, right? He's looked strong since then, so the UFC is giving him a shot. You got Karol Rosa versus Pannie Kianzad. We haven't done that prediction yet. Karol Rosa is almost a 2-1 favorite there. You got Denise versus Carl Williams. That's going to be a big fight in the heavyweight division early on. Carl Williams is 10-1. Denise 7-0. Who says this isn't a good card? Come on now. These are just guys that are on the come up. You also got Zalal versus Aarons, right? Morocco versus Netherlands. Yes, sir. And in the ladies' fight to begin the night, you got Luciano, who I don't know much about, taking on Alencar. And this is another Brazil-on-Brazil matchup. So there's not going to be an easy angle there in the first fight of the night. So if anyone says this is a weak card, they're not lying. But the true UFC fans like you who are watching this video right now and me, the diehards, are going to be watching this card. It don't matter if there's no fans there, which there'll be a few. It doesn't matter if no one else is watching because we're diehards and we're going to watch. That's just the bottom line. And yeah, it is one of the weaker cards of the year, but that's not going to stop me from watching. Please believe it. I mean, please believe it. Yes, sir. But listen, that's a wrap. Those are your top 5 fights and the predictions. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below this video to get access to all the predictions. Join us for the live watch parties in the future. UFC 305 coming up the following week, right? You got Duplessis versus Adesanya for the middleweight title. Who cares who else is on that card, right? Because we know we got a big time fight at the top. So we got a lot coming up in the near future. We got Hamza back in action against Robert Whittaker. So we got all types of stuff to talk about here in the near future. So make sure you stay tuned. For now, this is your boy Chris Cross. I hope you have a great day, and God bless. As always, peace.